So this week, the fuel tanks are 100% complete, so let me put them off to the side over there. I do need to find some fittings to be able to get those sealed up and do the air tests, so I'll work on finding those. I'm assuming that I can find them relatively locally and get that sealed up and pressurized to, 1 or 2 psi, something like that. So here I'm working on the longer push rods that go inside the wing to connect to the bell crank, that then connect from bell crank to another push rod to control the ailerons on the end of the wings. One thing I did notice, and maybe this is a helpful hint for some of the builders, the template that they give you in the back of the aileron actuation section to drill the holes in the push rods, that template is actually too short by maybe an eighth of an inch, somewhere between an eighth and a quarter of an inch. So what I did was basically wrap those around the end of the push rods and then basically just shoot for the middle of that gap where that template didn't quite meet up to itself. Seemed to work out perfectly fine, and obviously that's the intent of the template, so I don't think it's going to be anything deleterious when it comes to the actual performance of the push rods or the longevity of them either. So got everything primed up. The directions were very clear about make sure that you have all those primed connections done before you put everything together permanently. My guess is that's probably a factor of two things. One, it's going to be exposed to the elements, and two, you have dissimilar metals between the aluminum rivets and the aluminum push rod, and then the steel fitting at the end. So probably helping to reduce some of that galvanic corrosion between the two of those dissimilar metals. So the next thing you'll see me working on is the actual push rods for the ailerons. These were significantly harder to build. I think it's because it's a smaller diameter. I also learned pretty quickly that you really can't use the squeezer to smash those 470 rivets at the when you're actually finally assembling them. My guess is that the opening for the rivet squeezer is a little bit too big, and it always ends up offsetting the rivet, the shop head of the rivet, instead of making it a nice flush, flat finish. So I ended up having to use the rivet gun to get those installed in place correctly. And here, with that plywood that I'm stepping on, I had a hard time getting one of the fittings installed at the end of those aileron push rods. So I was basically just trying to smash it in place with a 3-pound sledgehammer and get that thing driven into place. Got it within, I'd say, a 32nd of an inch to get it all the way home. So called that good enough and moved on. Towards the end of the video, you'll see my dad join me. He's actually in town this weekend, and he was helping out in the shop a little bit. And we got to the point where we could actually separate the wings and put them back on their respective workbenches so we could start working on the inside of the wings and the underside, getting bell cranks installed and whatnot for the next steps. And that's about it this week.